Hi, history of Azerbaijan. The history of the Armenian nationalists' policy to genocide against the Azerbaijani people dates back to the early 18th century, when Tsarist Russia was exploiting the Armenians by promising them to create an Armenian state in the Caucasus in order to ramp up its expansionist policy towards the South Caucasus. Between 1722 and 1735, during the reign of Peter the Great, the Caspian coast, including Derbent, Baku, and Salyan, came under Imperial Russian rule as a result of the Russian-Persian War. On November 10th, 1724, Peter I issued a decree allowing the Armenians to settle in Baku and other regions of Azerbaijan. Using this opportunity, the Armenians committed horrific crimes against the Azerbaijani population in different regions of Azerbaijan in order to build an Armenian state in our historical lands. The Armenians' intermittent but well sought out policy of genocide resulted in the slaughter of thousands of innocent Azerbaijanis, burning down of their homes and plunder of their property. Outstanding Azerbaijani ruler Nadir Shah Afshar, 1736-1747, who came to power after the fall of the Soviet state, expanded the territory of the former empire. In 1739, he invaded northern India, including Delhi. But his plans to create a powerful centralized state on this large territory failed. He seized Iran, banished the Afghans in 1729, and marched as east as Delhi in the hope of founding another Persian empire. Not fortifying his Persian base, however, exhausted Nadir's army. He controlled Shah Tahmasib II and was regent of the infant Abbas III until 1736, when he had himself crowned as a Shah on the Mughal plain. Nadir quickly established a new Iranian empire, amassing territory unknown since the Sassanians. He conquered the Caucasus, Mesopotamia, portions of Anatolia, large parts of Central Asia, and defeated the Mughals in the Battle of Karnal. Nadir sacked Delhi, the Mughal capital, and brought much wealth back to Persia. Although his empire was short-lived, he is considered Asia's last great conqueror. After the death of Nadir Shah, his empire fell. In the second half of the 18th century, Azerbaijan was divided into small states, khanates and sultanates. That period of Azerbaijan's statehood history is criticized as the period of the crisis and recession. In the late 18th century, Qajar dynasty of Turkic origin came to power in Iran. The Qajars pursued a policy of subordinating Azerbaijani khanates to the central power. Azerbaijan became a theater of long-term bloody wars between the Qajars and Tsarist Russia, which sought to occupy the South Caucasus. And I will talk about Transcaucasia in the early 19th century. Nadir Shah's Afsharid dynasty disintegrated after his assassination in 1747, and several Turkic khanates with varying degrees of autonomy emerged in the region. The Inach Agha Muhammad Khan Qajar turned to the restoration of the outlying Safavid and Afsharid provinces. Returning to Tehran in the spring of 1795, he assembled a force of about 60,000 cavalry and infantry and set off for Azerbaijan in May. He intended to reconquer all territory lost to the Ottomans and Russians, including the region between the Aras and Kura, formerly under Iranian Safavid and Afsharid control. The region contained a number of khanates, of which the most important was Karabakh, with its capital at Shah. Ganja Shirvan across the Kura, with its capital at Shamahe, and Christian Gurstan, Georgia, on both banks of the Kura in the northwest, with its capital at Tiflis. All were under nominal Persian suzerainty. The external threats. The most powerful northern Khan was Fatali Khan of Guba, died in 1783, who united most of the neighboring Khanates and mounted an expedition to seize Tabriz from the Zand dynasty. The Karabakh Khanate subdued neighboring Nakhchivan and portions of Iran around 1900. The Caucasus, after the Treaty of Gulistan, in which Persia ceded most of its northern Khanates to Russia after the First Russian-Persian War. Agha Muhammad Khan was victorious in the civil war, which began with the death of the last Zand king. His reign is noted for the re-emergence of a united Iran. After the death of Nadir Shah and the last of the Zands, most of Iran's Caucasian territories had broken away and formed Khanates. Agha Muhammad Khan, like the Safavid kings and Nadir Shah before him, viewed the region as no different from Iran, and his first objective after securing Iran was to reincorporate the Caucasus into it. Georgia was seen as an integral territory. For Muhammad Khan, the subjugation and reintegration of Georgia into the Iranian Empire was part of the process which brought Shiraz, Isfahan, and Tabriz under his rule. Agha Muhammad Khan invaded the Caucasus, crossing the Aras and recapturing Shirvan, Dayravan, Nakhchivan, Derbent, Talish, Shaki, and Karabakh Khanates, and Igdir. Agha Muhammad was crowned Shah in 1796 on the Mugham plain. As Nadir Shah had been 60 years earlier, he was assassinated while preparing a second expedition against Georgia in 1797 in Shusha. Iranian rule of Georgia was short-lived. In 1799, the Russians marched into Tbilisi. Russia had pursued a policy of expansion with its southern neighbors, the Ottoman Empire and Iran. Since the late 17th and early 18th centuries, the 2 years following Russia's entries into Tbilisi were a time of confusion, and Georgia was absorbed by Russia in 1801. Iran wouldn't allow the cession of Transcaucasia and Dagestan, leading to the Russo-Persian War of 1804-1813 and the 1826-1828. Eastern Georgia, Dagestan, Armenia, and Azerbaijan were ceded to Russia in the 1813 Treaty of Gulistan and the 1828 Treaty of Turkmenchay. Also, the Armenians who were resettled in the territories of Azerbaijan were less in numbers than the Azerbaijanis living there. They managed, with support from their patrons, to establish an administrative unit. This laid the foundation of the policy of displacement of the indigenous people of Azerbaijan from their lands and their annihilation. Also, the 1804-1813 Russo-Persian War disrupted trades and agriculture in the Caucasus. The 1826-1828 war was primarily fought in Iran. As a result of the wars, long-standing ties between Iran and the region were severed during the 19th century. In 1812, Russia ended a war with Turkey and went on the offensive against Iran. This led to the Treaty of Gülistan in 1813, which gave Russia control over large territories that hitherto had been at least nominally Iranian, and moreover, say in Iranian succession politics. The whole of Dagestan and Georgia, including Minglaria and Abkhazia, were formally ceded to Russia, as well as 8 khanates in modern-day Azerbaijan, Karabakh, Ganja, Shaki, Kuba, Shirvan, Talish, Baku, and Derbent. However, as we have seen, the Persian soon challenged Russia's rule in the area, resulting in a military disaster. Iran lost control over the whole of Azerbaijan, and with the Turkmenchai settlement of 1828, Russia threatened to establish its control over Azerbaijan, unless Iran paid a war indemnity. The British helped the Iranians with the matter, but the fact remains that Russian troops had marched as far as south of Tabriz. Also, certain areas, including Tabriz, were returned to Iran. Russia was in fact at the peak of its territorial expansion. Now I will talk about after Gülistan and Turkmenchai Treaty. The Treaty of Azerbaijan was divided by the two empires under Gülistan 1813 and Turkmenchai 1828 treaties. The north of Azerbaijan was annexed to Russia, while the southern Azerbaijan became part of Iran, which was ruled by the Qajar dynasty. This marked the beginning of mass resettlement of the Armenian population from neighboring countries to the Azerbaijani lands, in particular the territory of Karabakh, Yerevan, and Nakhchivan Khanates. The 1826-1828 Russo-Persian War resulted in another defeat for Iran. The Qajar ceded their remaining Caucasian territories, the remainder of Azerbaijan, the Nakhchivan and Lankaran Khanates, and Armenia's Yerevan Khanate. Tariffs were lowered on Russian goods, and Russia could keep a navy in the Caspian Sea. The Treaty of Turkmenchai defined Russian-Iranian relation until 1970, establishing the present borders of Azerbaijan and Iran as Khan rule ended. In present day, Azerbaijan, in the newly Russian-controlled territories, two provinces were established, which became most of present-day Azerbaijan: Elizabethpol, Ganja in the west and Shamakh district in the east. Azerbaijanis are now divided between Azerbaijan and Iran. The Russian conquest sparked an exodus of Caucasian Muslims towards Iran, including many Turkic peoples from north of the Aras. And at the end, I would like to show you the key dates. Russian occupation for a period, 1722-1829. Thank you for your attention.